Hey, is this real life?
Welcome, mere mortalites, to the real world of the mere mortals. I am Juan.
I'm Karen here.
Am
I?
Oh, exactly. And we got musings today. A little bit deep conversations with a light-hearted touch.
Mm-hmm.
Today I got the pleasure to think of what we're going to talk about, and something in Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, something I've been reading recently, popped into my eyeballs. I really liked it, noted it down. I thought, okay, I think we can converse about this and we'll see where it leads. I have no idea where it's going to lead, but there's some interesting bits about it. So the whole premise was objectivity, subjectivity, and intersubjectivity.
Yep.
So we're probably going to focus in intersubjectivity more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So just as a quick little highlight for people, just to kind of get that understanding, a little bit of a definition as well. What is objectivity? Look, think of it like physics, chemistry. It's the actual things that happen in the world around us, in the universe. It is what is known. It's not like you need a human being present for something objective to happen, right? So this is rain coming down. If humans weren't here, it's still going to come down. Gravity being available and warping because of masses and time, that's still going to happen regardless of humans.
Yep.
Now you've got subjectivity. So this is very much where you've got the presence of a conscious mind. So there's an interesting, so it's a conscious mind. I could say obviously the example is a human. It could happen with other things that you think is conscious, whatever that may be, but that introduces a subjectivity. So that's a conscious being able to say, okay, it is raining, and what that experience feels to that conscious mind, okay, that's a subjective view. Why? Because you might say, I hate rain, or like, rain sucks, and somebody else might say, well, rain is great. And both of those subjective views are correct to their own entity, to their own conscious being. And then there's the next thing, and I had never heard of this, intersubjectivity, which explained, and I'll actually get a little definition of that one as well.
That would be useful.
It's existing between more than one conscious mind. So more than one conscious mind. So this is things like money, the value of assets, what we define things as. So apple. So if you would say to us, another human being, like, hey, here's an apple, you and me have a shared understanding of what an apple actually is. So there's a intersubjectivity. So it's almost...
So is that like the category of apple? So, because I'd want to argue, but apple is a real world object. Like that's reality in a way. That's what I'd sort of want to say. But you're there saying apple is... No, it's more like an apple has these characteristics in our own heads. So it's got to be round, it's got to be, fruity and juicy, it's got to have this sort of taste and smell. An orange is not an apple, even though it has many things sort of related to it. There's a couple of things different.
Well, and here's the definition of that. Well, of how I take it, right? That it is not objective because it isn't a base level of the universe. In the sense that it is going to be subjective in some kind because we are giving it a name. Like, why is apple and not like goo goo? Right? Like that could be if you go to another tribe or another language, it's said in a different way. Why don't they say it as apple? So the intersubjectivity is if you're English speaking and using the English language, you call it an apple.
Yeah, okay, I think I got a good one. So Sam Harris brings this up quite often as, what is a car? Is, you've got a BMW in front of you. Awesome, that's a car. If you take off its wheels, is it still a car? Maybe it is. Okay, if you take out the windshield wipers, is it still a car? How much can you take away for it to still have car essence in it? And so that's where you could say, the intersubjectivity is like you and I just both agree on car until it's broken down enough that you're like, no, I'm stepping out, and I say, it's still car at this point.
And here's another clear example that's a bit more far removed than something that he actually mentioned, Yuval, in the Sapiens book, was companies. So companies are created through legal structures, but all of these things are still intersubject. It's still just attributes that between conscious mind, which is just humanity in general, we just take for that's true. It's not the truth of the universe. It's not like, if you went to Mars, are the laws going to be the same? No, they don't even have laws because there's no people there. There's no laws there. So we create laws, and then we create companies that go underneath these laws, and then we all believe, I think the example he was giving in the book is like Peugeot, right? I don't know if you actually say the company name like that, but it's a car company in Europe. And there was a guy
Peugeot.
Is it Peugeot?
I think that's how it's,
I say Peugeot. Jeez, Peugeot.
Yeah.
There you go. Learn
Yeah,
something new. God damn.
it's a weird one.
Okay, Peugeot.
So
I'm
let's
say now, I think the guy who created that was, his last name was Peugeot, and it was in like 1886 or something like that, right? And it was like multiple generations who, but he died at some point, right? And then everyone just kept believing, like, that's a company, there's Peugeot, like, oh, there's Peugeot cars. But, you know, that's all just us believing the idea in the, you know, intersubjectivity, that this is the thing that exists. The objectivity is that that's just us just creating all these ideas and, you know, structures in place of this is what we practice in the world around us. So, in a summary sense, objectivity is, you know, basically physics, what's the reality around you. Subjectivity is like very much just your view, and then intersubjectivity is the view of many people. Like, it's not like just some crazy thinking. No, it's like this common shared experience. And so the main one that I want to talk about first.
Can I before you do that?
Yes.
Just another way of stating that is what I've written down to put it in my own. For me, I was saying that objectivity or reality is sort of truth. So there's going to be, you know, even if there was no humans here alive to witness it, there would still be an Earth, there would still be a moon. Like the laws of gravity would still do this. You know, mathematics would still 1 + 1 would still equal 2. You know, that's getting a bit different, but etc. etc. Subjectivity is more an individual truth, so it can be true, but it's going to be individualized. It's not going to apply everywhere, and this is where you need that consciousness, that humanity. And then the intersubjectivity was a consensus on something, but not necessarily true. So we can all think that, you know, green is the color of the grass over here, but in another age, they used green for the color of the sky, as I believe it was Romans or Greeks did. They would describe the sky as like green colored or wine colored or something like that.
Like there was like a point in time when like blue wasn't a thing that ever got used. It was like, did they just not have a word for it? But they could describe multiple levels of green, but not blue. Yeah.
So those random things where it's that coming together of different consciousnesses and agreeing on something. I also wrote down it's essentially is agreement. Perhaps common sense is also one of the definitions that sort of was coming up with.
What popped in my mind as you were saying that was, maybe another way to say it, objectivity is the absolute truth.
Yeah, absolute
subjectivity
truth. That's a good
is
one.
your truth. Intersubjectivity is our truth.
Yeah,
so
that's
it's just what you believe is like, your truth, the group's truth, and then the absolute truth. That ain't changing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to focus more on the intersubjectivity because we could talk about objectivity. That makes sense. Subjectivity. Okay, that makes sense. Probably we could get into it, but I don't think it's going to be
so the novel one, something that's new.
Yeah. So the
us.
intersubjectivity, and I wanted to I was thinking about getting started with money, and we might talk a little bit around that. But I actually wanted to talk about the definition of value in podcasts, because that's one thing where I found intersubjectivity is a lot about definition, right? Because of what you define. Because you can define what money means in Australia, and that might be different to what the definition of money is in El Salvador, because now they're using Bitcoin, right? So there's differences in the intersubjectivity, maybe in that grouping in the location, right? Because Australia uses it in different ways, El Salvador uses it in different ways. So if you said money, it means different things in both places, even though the same word is being used, or the connotation of what that means is being used. But then I want to ask you, what do you think the definition of value from a podcast, so the definition of value in podcasts should be? Like, what should be our truth in relation to the value of podcasts? And so this is...
So me as a listener or me as the podcast
almost
creator?
as like the ecosystem. Like when you think of like the ecosystem of podcasts in general, what would you say should be the truth, like our truth, if you had to think of like a sentence or an idea behind it? So for when I look at it, like what I'm thinking, okay, what's the common sense if you think about podcasts? And this got me because, as I mentioned in meanderings as well, like somebody asked me, you know, what are podcasts? And I was like, okay, this is an interesting way. So for me, I kind of went, okay, it's a sort of a capsule of information, generally in audio form, right? And that was to me, like, okay, that's, I guess, how I would define it in that sense. Do you believe that that's probably close enough to the mark of what most people would believe, or we all believe, yep, that's what podcasts are? And is it right? It's the other thing. That is super cool.
We just got passed by
Do you know what that's marked
it's
on
like
the side as well?
It's like a TIE fighter thing, right?
Yeah, well, that actually, it's like a Star
so
Wars
like a Star
sign.
Wars thing,
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
Gee.
sorry, people. We got distracted by how would you describe that? It was a cocoon.
Oh, well, you might be able to see it in your background. Oh, perhaps. Oh, it's imagine like a very
don't
small
think about that.
tricycle low to the ground that's encapsulated by like some sort of polymer.
I'd say
I don't know.
a really good box car that was electric. So
Yeah.
you know, like box cars where if you've seen any of
Streamlined.
the Simpsons episodes where they're Bart's racing downhill versus
yeah,
Nelson
yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that sort of level of like looking real schmick and good.
Yeah.
More like Martin's actually in
Oh,
that
yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was
Throws off.
This is what happens when you're outdoors, people.
But yeah, so what do you believe that hits close enough to the mark, or, and this is more where I'm leading with this question as well, is should we be changing what value means in podcasts and what the podcast value is in general?
Well, it sort of sounds like you were answering two things there. One was, what is a podcast? I asked James Cridlin this recently as well, and he was saying, you know, a podcast is whatever people want to call a podcast. So if you're doing it on video like we are, and putting it on YouTube and people are watching it on there, that's a podcast. If it's a random like string of numbers that you're just saying into the microphone, if you're creating an audio that you're sending for everyone but it's directed, you know, to one person in particular, and you're just sharing an RSS link to them, you know, that can be a podcast. Like whatever it is, without getting too crazy outside of the definition. So maybe if you're having an audio book, that's slightly different than a podcast, for example.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Maybe even church sermons, things like that, conferences where it's designed just for one person. Yeah, that's pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
The other, you know, the value in or of a podcast. Yeah, I mean, it's communication, right? It's just another way of communicating. So I would say the value there is, if you're getting real deep into it, it's like being able to understand the world maybe, or to you know, try and make sense of what the hell this consciousness that I have is doing with relation to your one, and then trying to figure that out a bit. And then it doesn't really matter what we're communicating in that. It can be real informational, i.e. this is how you trade stocks, this is how you crochet this thing. Can be more humor and philosophy like we're doing, so that can be more the entertainment realm. It can be a lot of those things, but I'd say it's like the linking of the value in most of them would be the communication aspect of making sense somehow.
Yeah, okay. No,
and if you're listening to a podcast that's not making sense, or like making less sense for you, you're probably doing it wrong.
Yeah. That's when you know you're not blended in correctly.
There goes like 80% of our catalog.
Yeah, goodbye. But then another portion of the and maybe there's another question. So I mean, I keep saying intersubjective. I kind of don't enjoy that wording. I actually like saying like.
What do you want to
truth.
change it? We can change it.
I say
now.
our truth. I do like our truth.
Okay.
So this is the multiple conscious minds, our truth. What do you actually think is one truth, like the communal truth, which is just so wrong? Like, what's a communal truth that you go, dang, we have it majorly wrong? And maybe a little bit while you're thinking about it, one of the things that, you know, in both of my experience and what I've seen is in money aspect, one of the communal truths is that, money should be first in cash. I won't even talk about cryptocurrency. Let's just go from the transition from cash to digital, right? There was a portion in time when, you know, we weren't using like digital transactions. It was like purely cash, right? For a very, very long time. And at that point of that evolution, that movement from, you know, actual physical to digital, our truth was, no, cash was like these coins. And there's probably still a lot of people on the world who are like, no, this is what, like, this is to me money. It's the physical asset. And then it's that transition that would have taken, you know, whatever period of time, where our truth of money expanded to, it's also a digital currency as well. So by digital currency, I mean like you see the numbers of money that you have on a bank account online, right? As opposed to, I've got this money stashed underneath my bed. And it's, again, the same thing moving into, I think, cryptocurrency. So that our truth of what money is, I don't think has pierced the veil of the majority where money is seen as, oh no, it's this and this, but it's not crypto. That's not money. That's something else entirely. And will we ever get there? I'm not sure. But it's almost like that our truth broadly to become like the global our truth might, it does take a certain percentage for it to get there and then start consuming more people. Because for sure, there's some people out there who I say I'm not part of that truth. They've got their own subjective view of like, oh no, well, cash is, whatever, muffins. And like that to me is cash. Maybe there's a human out there who thinks that. But do you think there's maybe another aspect that we think of our truth that's fairly standard? Do you think, I think we got that wrong?
Yeah, I'd say there's a couple. Just when you were talking then, yeah, that's the biggest thing about the Bitcoin and blockchains and stuff. Like the definition of money, I would say for most everyone, and this is totally including myself, is distorted.
Yep,
for sure. It's what it actually does and is, and how we use it is way different from what it is in my head, and I'm not exactly sure, and that's why I would say the crypto stuff is just so baffling. Like, it's one of the most baffling things if you really start to get into it a bit. You just go like, oh fuck, oh god. There's a couple. One, I would say this is maybe one that most people would believe about themselves and of other people, but I would say is probably wrong. This is getting to the Gulag Archipelago, which is that you're a good person. I would say you're not a good person inherently. It's by luck. It's by circumstance more.
Yeah,
and that if circumstances slightly change, and I'm talking like barely, not a huge concerted effort of a nation state to change me as an individual.
Yeah,
it's only like a couple of random events in my life. A car crash here that was essentially unavoidable.
Yep.
I totally believe that everyone can turn into a really, really horrible, evil, I'll even say evil person, just given very slight circumstances.
Well, I mean, the clear example as well, obviously, in the gulags, but in Nazi Germany, and where they would actually take prisoners to be the capos, so be basically the staff that would look after some of the other inmates, and in a lot of books they actually say that these capos were actually even more evil or more sadistic than even some of the staff. That's not generalizing that it's everything, but there was a lot of those individuals who were basically, they were a prisoner already, but they were giving a little bit of extra power, and it was just the circumstances that allowed them to enact as evil, to be like, well, I'm going to punish you ridiculously amount, even though you don't have to. The circumstance can change that.
Yeah. So I would say that's one that we all sort of believe about ourselves and most other people, and it's shocking when you find out that this person did this or this person did that. And here's
so before you go into the other ones as well, because I want to mention this point. One thing that Yuval was saying in Sapiens was, if you try to veer away from from our truth, and the more extreme you get in that deviation, it's often the more pushback you're going to get, but also the harder it is, unless you've got a concerted effort with a lot of people, to actually change that idea. To say that perspective of our truth being oh, we're all good people, and being no, we're not. There's a lot of possible ways we could be sadistic and evil, and it's just by circumstance that you're really not being that. It is our truth for a reason. We've all believed that for whatever reason, right? To change that mentality it's not like you could go around telling as many people as that. Let's say this podcast goes to heaps and heaps of people, millions of people listen to it, and it changes not all of their minds, but some of their minds. Even then, there would have to be such a ginormous change for that to become intersubjective, for that to become our truth for a big population. If not, it just kind of remains in the subjective world of just you. Yeah, that's your view, that's maybe my view, that's maybe a couple of other people's view, but it's not the truth. It's not our truth that you would say. As you may become, if an alien came and asked everybody person on Earth, they would come away with, oh, in general, they believe they're good people. That's kind of the standard belief that they have.
Yeah. The other one that would jump out at me is just something to do with sex and sexual relations between men and women in particular, just because that's the 99% of relations. what is the purpose of makeup, for example? Like, Jordan Peterson touches his subject and it's like, burning, like, kill him with fire sort of stuff going on.
Yeah.
When I got into, like, the game area, a lot of things would come up regarding, like, there's statistics about how many women orgasm while actually being raped, and things like that, which when you start to dive into, like, some individual things, there's, like, just real shocking, disturbing sort of statistics and facts out there, which are just like, I think most of us don't want to even touch or go near, because they are disturbing, and it's like, God shows the real animalistic side of us as well.
Shows the reality, like shows the objectivity of the world. And you're like, I don't want to deal in this.
Yeah,
I don't want to deal in that.
Yeah. So I think, just in particular with sexual relations, there's, and I can't really articulate it better than that for the moment, but there's definitely some perceptions that we as a whole have, and this would be like maybe more countries, because some countries view it very differently. Like, the Afghani man is going to view how men and women should interrelate way differently than I do. So maybe this is more a country level, our truth on a country level. Yeah.
Here's one though that I think is beyond, and I think that we've got a little bit wrong, that goes beyond. So this would be definitely a global thing. Okay. And it comes because money is, whether you like it or not, a universal thing.
Yeah, and, everyone.
And Yuval's saying this, and it totally makes sense, right? What makes money money? Like, why have we, all humans, have just decided, like, okay, I'm going to send you some numbers online and you're going to give me something? It's because, again, in our truth, we all believe that money, we can use the money to get something else that we actually want. So you might not want whatever they're offering you, and that's why you might work. Like, you might not want to work for, let's say, at the local pub or something, but you're going to get money, which enables you to go get something that you do want, because it's a universal thing. It's a universal idea that we've all used. And obviously makes a comparison, like, way back in the day, right? I think the first use of money was barley. And barley was attached to something that you could actually do. You could eat it, right?
Oh, you're talking barley like the wheat.
Yeah, like barley like the wheat. Yeah. And you could, there was a particular time when more people who were earning a lot of barley, like, you couldn't eat all of it, so you had to give it away to other people to go and get something else that you wanted, right? But at some point in time, that started becoming just like a coin or a shell, right? And we were just putting value to that and saying, like, well, you give me 3 shells and I'll go and give you this other thing, which to us sounds crazy. But obviously to them, that was like, oh, well, that's the value. They'll probably see what we're doing and see it's crazy. Be like, what the hell? You're getting numbers given to you. And it's like, that's what you use? Like, you don't even have a physical thing. Like, what? That's crazy. But attached to that, obviously, because that's a universal thing. Like, I would hazard that probably 99.99% of population on Earth would be affected in money that way. The other may be like, you're either just absolutely poor, you're living in like a village where just that doesn't, like, you're still not even with like the civilized world, so maybe in that space, but would be success. I think our truth view of what success is, it's still very much attached to money or monetary things, in that allowing you to get what you want. Definitely. And that's a hard one, because we are now in a stage as society, as humans, where you need money, no matter what. Like, pretty much everywhere you are, you need money. And you can say, like, oh, I don't need money, I can go and live and camp out and something like that. Yes, you can, but rest assured, like, everybody else in society still wants money if you're going to, like, exchange it for something. So unless someone's going to give you food to, like, live, hey, they need money so that they can actually go and do that for you. So it's penetrating in some way, shape, or form. But without changing that, I think at least our definition of the truth of what success is well too attached to money. Now, I'm going to say you can't get rid of it, for sure. But I think there's better ways that we can attach what success is to other things, other attributes to the world around us. So I think we overemphasize the position of, success to money and assets, and not of, the standard things, happiness or relations or other things. I think whatever the study was, it's always flagged, and I've never actually looked at it, but I know that the whole final, result from now on was like, what's the thing that makes you happier? And it was like, what type of relationships you have, right? So even though we came up with like studies that actually say like, it's like the relationships you have through your life that makes you the happiest, for whatever they term that, we're still like 100%. A lot of people still be like, oh yes, but if I'm not earning this amount of money, or if I don't have this thing or that, then I'm not happy. Like I'm not happy. So I think that's also a really big thing that our truth definitely misses, probably in a negative way.
Yeah, that's probably one. Maybe statements such as like, you made me X, you made me feel bad. Those ones, I think the way we all talk to ourselves in a way, and sort of the language around action and emotions, particular in emotions, there's something a bit wonky there. But yeah, once again, I'm not sure if that's getting into intersubjectivity or if that's an individual thing.
Yeah.
Because there's definitely something like when you start looking at the language that you use, and it's like, this person made me feel X, and it's like, no, they didn't make you feel X. You felt X.
Yeah,
there was things happening, and then you felt them. So maybe like just the agreement around what. So like, let's just take TV shows and famous people talking about just whatever. I would say there's an implicit assumption that other people do things to me rather than things happening and then me creating them. Something like that.
No, for sure. I got a bone to pick. Some people.
Oh.
So we're talking a little bit about intersubjectivity, so this is our truth. But I'm going to go back to the things like absolute truth and, your truth. And there's been more than once. Like I've had conversations with some people where they'll say, like, that's not the reality. That's not the objective. That's not the objective reality.
Okay.
Right? Maybe sometimes even using those exact words.
Yeah.
But it's not reality. And I kind of fall back with, yes, I get that, but you do need subjectivity in some, like a lot of places. You actually need the subjectivity. You can't just say, well, that's not reality. Well, it's like, well, sure, that's reality, but if you don't overlay with subjectivity, well, you're going to get stuffed up. And so an example that I just pulled up, but it resonated, was in nursing, right? If you're just subjective about something, you could quickly kill someone, in the sense that, imagine you've got your patient and you're just looking objectively. And what does that mean? You're looking at just the numbers in terms of the heart rate's this, the pressure's that, the whatever levels are in these areas. Okay, it sort of seems fine. But the patient, in their subjectivity, in their truth, goes, hey, by the way, I can't feel any of my extremities. I can't feel my arms, I can't feel my legs, can't feel anything. If you're totally objective,
but
you might be like...
the stats look good.
Yeah, exactly right. So objectivity, you might be like, well, but everything looks fine, so just chill out. And then, for whatever reason, maybe you weren't looking at the right objective stats or something else, they die. And it's like, oh, shit, you probably should have listened to their subjective view. So I think there's also something to be said that taking a point of view where you don't acknowledge the truth of a particular person, like a particular individual, doesn't even have to be intersubjectivity, just subjectivity. You might miss other things that are important. So just because they're not, clear to your eyes, doesn't mean they're not actually real and part of us.
Yeah,
for sure. So,
nice, man.
Anything else you want to bring up around this one?
No, I think that'll do me.
Good. Mere Mortalites, is there other ideas, thoughts, processes that you think our truth should be shifted to? Is our truth wrong in other ways that we haven't mentioned in the podcast today? Is there maybe things that are your truth that you wish were our truth? There's other things out there.
I'd love to hear some. I'd
love to hear some crazy. I'd love to hear the craziest thing you can. Either comment or, actually, more important, either comment or what I would prefer you do is send a little boostagram. Send a little boostagram of what it is, and I'd be keen to talk about it with you. If it was the case, because we've seen we could actually converse with people through boostagrams if you're obviously boostagram enabled and you have a podcast. But if not, you can hit me up there and be like, we could talk through here or whatever, and I actually would have a conversation with you around that. So
couple of applications to do that, and I'll give my method. Go into Breeze Wallet, so Breeze, BREEZ.
Yep.
You can upload some Satoshis there, some Bitcoin there, via your debit card or whatever. That's the easiest. Send those onto other apps, or use it directly from there. You can boostagram in there as well, and send it to places like Podfriend, Curocaster, Fountain, Castomatic. Those are the places where you can do boostagrams.
That's right, plenty of good places. Otherwise, though, obviously, we're not leaving the other streams, on the road.
Of course, you can find us everywhere.
Everywhere, Spotify, Apple, all the good normal places.
Our truth is that we are everywhere.
Everywhere. And if you're watching this, obviously, the video, because we don't shout out sometimes a lot of people in the videos, we do see the comments come through. We do enjoy you subscribing.
Yes.
combined, we're getting up some good numbers across both channels. Obviously, we have our Mere Mortals book review channel as well, and there's Value for Value. So if you're really confused about what we're talking about from a value perspective, you want to well-defined, you want to go into our truth when it comes to podcast value, go check out Value for Value. You'll get a couple of other ideas.
If you want one's book review of Sapiens, that will be coming up soon.
That's right as well. So might delve into a couple more of those topics. Maybe that'll obviously come up, the Our Truth and Intersubjectivity. But there'll be other little tidbits and information I'll get from that as well.
Very good.
All right, Mere Mortalites, that's it for now. One out.
Current out.
Yeah. Ooh.